So, hello everyone. So, here we are again. Amanda and I got together last week and we recorded about the Schumann resonance and lots of other things within that recording. And if you want to find that, it's on Vimeo and YouTube, and the link will be posted below this one. So, Amanda and I realised that it was such important information to get out to the world that we decided to carry on our series that we're calling Science and Spirituality, because it is all coming together right now, in the now, today, that we call September 2017. So here we go again. And Amanda is a water expert. So we're going to start off today's discussion with Amanda talking to us about water, how imperative it is that we realise that that water is either getting through what Amanda taught me is the aquaporum in the cells of the body, or it's not. And it's essential that if we truly are hydrating the body, that that water that we drink gets through this membrane of the aquaporum. So here we go. Amanda lives in the Balearics, is that correct? At the moment?
Yeah, in Mallorca.
In Mallorca, yeah. And she and I have become good friends and cohorts in getting out the information that is inside of us out into the world, which means to you listening to this right now. So, hi, Amanda.
Hi, Hazel. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I guess I'll just start with my story because that sort of leads into the water business that we're going to talk about today. I grew up, like probably many of you, started 40 years ago, in a world where water was just water. It just came from the sky and filled up our springs and filled up our dams and our lakes, and we turned on the tap and drank it. And you really didn't think any more of it. It was just there on tap. And it just blows my mind that, you know, I would become a medical professional and, you know, start doing master's degrees and actually specialise in water and be, you know, spending my life trying to just educate people on hydration and not drinking out of plastic bottles, which I'll get into later. But this is the world we've come to, you know, the water has changed due to, you know, the population and us having to supply water to so many people, and it has become a first world luxury, I guess, as it always has been. But where my journey began is as a nurse in hospitals. It used to just blow my mind that someone would come into hospital and we'd put them on a drip and they'd lie there and not eat for a few days. If their bowels were clogged up, we'd give them an enema. And they'd leave feeling better, normally thanking them for what we did, which was give them a drip and hydrate them. And, you know, if you want to take it a step further, the day I had my biggest blowout was I was actually doing the colonoscopy operations. And at the time I was also a nutrition student, so I was very interested in the gut. And I was talking to one of the surgeons, and he was laughing, saying that he was going to be employed forever because we lived in a constipated world. And he said that every time he did a colonoscopy on someone, which involved them taking salt water, ingesting salt water to help them clean out their bowels, coming into hospital, going on a drip for a few hours, then having the scope up their bottom and getting all cleaned out, they would wake up after that operation and say, "Doctor, thank you. You've saved me. The operation went so well. I've never felt so good." The person wasn't operated on. They were hydrated and cleaned out, and their skin would be clear. They'd look $1 million. And he said he often had women and men come to him and ask for a colonoscopy just to give them a freshen up before a wedding because of what that made their skin so clear.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it just really made me think, you know, what an impact hydration had on us. And about that time I'd started sailing, and I was sailing around the world. So we were living on water maker water, where it's basically reverse osmosis water. So what happens in these situations is, which is going to be fantastic for the future, but we can take salt water and run it through membranes and take all the salt, all the total dissolved solids out, and take it back to its original source, H2O. Now, H2O isn't, I don't think, was originally intended for drinking, because H2O is a carrier, and it's designed, I think, to run through streams and pick up minerals from rocks. Yeah. And then it's actually H2O plus the minerals that it's picked up, and that's what the water we know is. So I was living on this reverse osmosis salt water, water maker water, for quite a long time, and I started noticing my joints were getting sore, and I was constantly thirsty and constantly needing hydration. When I wasn't drinking the water maker water, I was drinking bottled water, which had the same effect on me. So I decided to start looking into it more. At the time I was doing, masters in public health, and obviously international and public health, just clean drinking water is a huge global issue. And that aside, I just wanted to know what was good water, because then I was living in Mallorca and sailing around the world and living on plastic bottled water, which, I remember laughing with my sister, because we went surfing one day when we both moved overseas, and, coming from Tasmania, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And we'd finished our surf and we were washing our feet with a bottle of Evian. And we looked at each other and said, oh, how far have we come? I never thought we'd be washing our feet in Evian. I mean, God, imagine what everyone at home would think. But drinking this stuff, I was never satisfied anymore. And then I'd go back to Tasmania, I'd drink out of springs and from the tanks, and I'd feel great again. And I realised that to live here and, carrying the plastic bottles up and down the stairs was too much and too silly. And so I started trying to find out how to make the perfect water. Now, in this search, I was also fascinated with why you could drink so much water and I'd be peeing out clear. Yeah. And so it was clearly going through my system, but I was really thirsty. I mean, ravenous for water. And it was going through me, but not being soaked up into my cells. And we were doing a lot of professional racing at the time. So one of the things I learnt was that there often wasn't enough salts in the water, especially if you are sweating out a lot. So for our race crew, we were racing in Asia, and we'd get a water team down to the boat in the morning, still using plastic water bottles because that's all we had available. But we'd sit there and put a little pinch of salt and a little drop of apple cider vinegar in everyone's water. And the change in the crew and the crew performance was phenomenal by just getting, a few extra minerals in that water. People were hydrated. They were getting less illnesses because we were based in Thailand. We'd have a lot of people fly in and get the barley belly or whatever. We wiped that out. The guys stopped getting colds and flu.
What is the barley belly for people that don't get that?
It's normally a bacterial infection we get from water. So something in the water that normally makes the guts a bit funny. It could be all sorts of things. One of the most common is Giardia. But
bloated and that kind of symptom to tell you about.
And constant diarrhea, nearly crippling, and sometimes vomiting as well. Yeah, most people that travel to Asia, it's very rare that you could go to Asia and for a holiday at one, for the first time and not experience this.
Yeah.
I mean, once we had a whole crew, 50 people and all their families wiped out on it, and everyone was very ill.
So to be clear, by wiped out doesn't mean they died. It just means they got really sick.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
I want to clarify that because people, often when we're speaking to people and we're not precise enough, there's so much ambiguity that, you and I, we know that words are so important and we need to be clear on what we're telling people. So that's great, Amanda. Thanks for that. So you were talking about the bottled water and so on. Sorry for interrupting.
Adding some salt to it. Yeah, no, that's great. So by just getting everyone a bit more hydrated, we really improved the crew performance and everyone's health and wellness. And so that started leading me on to researching water more. And the constant question was, why do you drink so much water and need more and more and more? And then I found out about something I didn't learn in nursing school that I can remember. And in our cells, we have aquaporins. So let's break down the word. They let the aqua pour in. It's so simple. I think it's just gorgeous.
Yeah. See, words.
And what's happening is when we're making municipal water, so when, in cities we're taking water to a dam or a holding station, they need to remake the water so it's safe for human consumption. So I'll use the island I live on as an example. So we're on an island, so the soil on the island's constantly replenished in the island. It's sort of making its way up to the top and then coming back down from the mountains. And it's a very heavily farmed area, and it has been for many years. So we had a lot of E. coli, which is basically a bacteria from fecal matter, which will make you very sick. And there was a high amount of E. coli in our water here. So they need to put a lot of chlorine in to kill all that bacteria. So if you fill a bathtub here, it's blue. They will also add extra minerals. And in islands like this one, we actually use municipal water, which is coming from the rain in the lakes, for 6 to 9 months a year, and then we go into desalinated water, which is made in a big water making station like the ones I was talking about that we use sailing around the world. So sometimes we're using water made from the sea, other times we're using water from the land. In both cases, they have to treat the water heavily for human consumption. So when they're pouring in their minerals, the inorganic man-made minerals they're pouring in turn out to be a bigger molecular size, a higher micron rating than the ones that we get naturally from the environment, from the rocks in the streams and the flow of the water. So what happens with this that I found absolutely fascinating is, say this is an aquaporin the size of my finger, and the organic minerals that would occur naturally in streams are, say, the size of my little finger, and they can fit through.
Yeah.
The inorganic ones end up being bigger. So they're not actually making that transition from intracellular fluid to intercellular fluid.
Yeah.
So they're not crossing the membrane from outside the cell to inside the cell.
Mm.
And so what the body does, it actually will hold on to the minerals it does have in the cell and say, no, it's a defense mechanism, and it's saying, I'm full, thanks, I've got what I need. So basically we feel really thirsty, but we're not getting hydrated. So, I think the main thing is, I think many people listening would have had this experience. And I think the main thing is to work out, how can we get around this in the modern world? Yeah. And I encourage you all to be interested in water and to play with your water, because it's not just the water we drink, but we're bathing in these chemicals as well, right? So when in terms of bathing and the inorganic chemicals they're putting into the water for our safety, chlorine, for example, when heated over 30 degrees, actually can become quite a toxic gas. So if you're bathing in chlorinated water, which is common if you have municipal water, plus many people have to clean their wells and their holding tanks with chlorine, you actually risk breathing in quite a lot of this chlorinated gas, which can be quite harmful for the human body. So the first thing I like to do, when I'm traveling is to smell the water. Yeah. and just smell it, and you will smell the chlorine, if you just take the time to have a sniff. And that's normally my first decision on how much, whether I'll drink the water or not. Because, for example, they're putting, at times, 9 parts per million chlorine in the water here in Mallorca. And even the World Health Organization says that the maximum chlorine we should be putting in water is 2.5 parts per million. So even in a modern first world country, we're over-chlorinating the water, say, past the limits that who would recommend for a third world country or a developing country. And we do need to take that on board. So to start with, when I first became aware of this, you know, while I was looking to investigate, I got a Brita filter, and Brita filters don't actually filter out the chlorine. They filter out a lot of the sediments and a degree of bacteria and cysts. So when we're looking at water filters, they have micron ratings, and what you want in a good filter is a low micron rating. They go down to 0.09 now, but 0.5 is a good one. That's going to filter out plenty of things you need filtered from the water, viruses, cysts, pathogens, and still let the minerals through. And you know, if you want a perfect water filter, you'll get a low micron rating with a high flow rate. So I started with the Brita filter, and it's a great, you know, little temporary filter, you know, and it's something, you know, I still travel with sometimes. But the Brita filter wasn't filtering out the chlorine. So then I discovered that I could fill a jug of Brita filter water and put it in the fridge, because chlorine starts to die off when it's less than 35 degrees. So I was able to get a fair bit of chlorine out of the water that way. Another thing we can do is boil the water. So, you know, back to the traditional methods, and that's one way I did grow up, you know, where my grandmother lived. We often had to boil the water there when there'd been floods and extra pathogens that got in the water. And when we boil the water, we're taking everything out. The good thing here was that because we're a high scale area, so we have a lot of calcium and lime in the water, the water, when I boiled it, would actually settle to the bottom. But then I found that was really dehydrating me because there were no minerals in the water. I could rectify that with a pinch of salt, but it wasn't quite enough. So then I found myself trying to put a little bit of blue-green algae in there, and I was trying to resurrect my home spring in a pot of water at home. So yeah, I think first of all it depends on your budget and what you're open to. And I think really the best thing is, you know, is to feel your way. As I went along, I at the time discovered the alkalizing Kangen machines, and at the time there was a big rave about the alkali diet, and everyone was starting to get into the pH balance of the human body. So I invested in the Kangen machine based on this theory, but as it turned out, once I got my machine, I got interested in it and what those machines are generating, and what really healthy water supplies like a spring. So basically I was trying to change my tap water into something that resembled spring water. So the Kangen machine, even though it was making alkali water, that wasn't what the power of this machine was. These machines actually generate molecular hydrogen, and molecular hydrogen is a type of hydrogen that is really, really tiny, so it can really penetrate our cells. And when we look at water like this, it has what we call an ORP, an oxidized reduction potential, and most tap water is probably plus 450. Spring water is about, you know, normally our spring water here, I live on a lovely spring, and our spring water is naturally about 500 to 600 ORP. My mother lives part of the year in Canada, actually next to David Wolfe, the famous raw foodist house, and he invested in that property for the springs. And my stepfather has been used to make bottled water and now makes ice, and they've been involved in the water there. And there's a local guy there that's an absolute water god, and they're all thriving because their natural Canadian spring water is basically glacial water, and it has fresh minerals in it from running over the rocks. It is clean of any chemicals. It's clean of any E. coli and bacteria because the lands are so fresh there and they're not farmed and they're not using pesticides, etc. And the ORP of this water can be minus 850. And that's why, you know, as modern warriors, people have been getting into these sorts of devices. You know, they are a big investment, but it was when I got this device, you know, it was a time in my life, I think I was really seeking hydration, and I really felt hydrated. And my husband, that at the time was not really a water drinker, I saw him drink, you know, beer and chocolate milkshakes. And, you know, I had to really hassle him to fit the machine once I got it. You know what it's like, you get something new, and I was like, please install it today, please install it today. Anyway, he finally installed it and tested the water and had a sip, and I'd never seen anything like it. I think he just kept going back and drank about 12 glasses of it, and we were both thriving on being hydrated for the first time in our life. And it was such an incredible experience. Well, not the first time in our life, the first time in our adult life since, you know, we'd started travelling and having to rely on bottled water. And the other thing we have to ask ourselves is, you know, what's this bottled water that we're all drinking? I mean, I find it crazy because I go to countries where they can actually drink their tap water and they're still drinking bottled water because they think this is what we do. And they're saying the bottled water is going to have more of an effect on our life than smoking. You know, when the bottles are single use, and as they break down, they're releasing estrogens into our body, and they're, you know, apparently upsetting our chemical balance somewhat. But we're the guinea pigs. You know, I don't think we're going to see much, you know, for 10 or 15 years. Sorry, Hazel, I can't hear you.
I was going to say that bottled water has become $1 trillion industry, and that's why the marketing of it is to get people to buy it over and over and over again. And that's why it's important to get out into the world your knowledge. So I want to take time now, because you've given a lot of information that is that people need to absorb, right? They really need to get, you've told them. And so we're going back, aren't we, obviously, to step one with the water, you know, because you and I both know we've come a long way in our journey with hydrating the body. And this is where people who don't have the knowledge and the experience that you and I have need to start. So to sum up what you've said, would it be right to say that people who have no idea whether they're absorbing water or not, it would be good to start very first baby steps with a Brita filter, boil it, and then add to that, to an 8-glass, and this is what I used to do, add to 8 glasses of water, 1/4 teaspoon of Himalayan salt, must be good salt,
Yes,
for all the minerals in it. And also what I used to do, I used to add half of a fresh lime to my water. And I would guzzle that down, and I could feel my body, literally the cells would open up so that the water could pour in, as you described, you know, with the aquaporin that is like a membrane, that the molecular structure of that water is exactly the same as our body. So it can pass through very easily, like rocks absorb the water as well. And when it is synthetic water, with all of the stuff that, you know, our water suppliers put into the water to make it drinkable, the molecules are bigger than the aquaporin in the body, so they just get stuck and we don't absorb any of it. So first step, everybody who is new to this, get a Brita filter. fill it up.
Or something along those lines.
Yeah, a good filter that you can get on Amazon or anywhere, and it's cost effective, very cheap way of helping your own body. Fill that up. If you're smelling the chlorine, which, as you said, all water has got chlorine in to kill even more of the bad stuff, boil it, put it in the fridge below, I forget the degree, you said below 35
degrees.
Yeah, below that. So leave it in the fridge, and then that will dissolve the chlorine. So you're good to go with this water you've put in the fridge. Add to that every glassful, 1/4 teaspoon of Himalayan salt, half a lime, which will affect the acidic levels, make it more alkaline for us. And also, I know that the lime triggers the bile release as well. So lime is really, really good for that. And start there and have that once, twice a day and experiment. You'll find that you won't be going to the toilet so much during the night or whenever. And your stomach, like you mentioned, you know, you're not going to have your stomach blow up or anything, and your skin is going to get smoother and better over time. And that is the beginner's path to correct hydration going forward. Have I summed that up right?
Absolutely. And then, you know, I'll just mention to have a look at the colour of your pee. You know, as nurses, we're obsessed with the output of the body, you know, pee and poo. So, you know, one of water's main roles is adding weight to feces. And if there's enough water in our feces, it's helping us drag the toxins and getting all that waste that's supposed to be out of the body out. And we all know how it feels when we have a good motion.
Yeah.
And if it's little rabbit droppings, obviously you're not getting hydrated enough somewhere along the path. Plus, if your urine, medically speaking, your urine should be a very light yellow, you know, like the colour of a pale wood, first thing in the morning. And then it should nearly be clear by 10 a.m.
Well, as we go on with our series of water, I'd like to go into that a bit more, because this is going to an advanced level now. I'm not sure whether to bring it in or not to this conversation, but what I know now, because I used to go along with that belief that my urine should be clear, which is telling me my kidneys are working well. But I've since discovered, going on to the cutting edge of hydration, that my urine should not be clear first thing in the morning, because it's telling me that my kidneys have not filtered properly in the morning. But we'll go into that later, but because I don't want to confuse people with what we're trying to get across. So I probably have done that already, but go back to, I'd like you to listen to Amanda at this stage of your correct hydration. So at this stage, we're looking for clear pee, or almost clear, in the morning.
And also not feeling thirsty. We shouldn't really be waking up thirsty, you know, and I used to find thirst would wake me up. I would wake up and actually, you know, I remember when we were kids, actually, I think, without name dropping too much, I remember when we were children, Elle Macpherson, who was our Australian icon supermodel, used to say she'd wake up in the morning and drink 2 or 3 litres of water, or drink it through the night. So as teenagers, I think we were all piling our bedside tables up with water, thinking we'd look like Elle Macpherson if we drank all this water. And hers was Evian, of course, which we couldn't even get in Tasmania at the time. And I think that is a little over the top as well. We shouldn't, you know, we should be able to just sleep through the night without really getting up to pee or drink water.
Yeah.
And you want to get yourself to a point where you don't need to drink a litre of water before you go to sleep. You don't need to wake up feeling thirsty or hungry. You should just wake up and feel content and happy.
Yeah, and happy in your body. Yeah, I totally get that. That's wonderful. Yeah, I remember just relate a little bit of my story with water. you know, buying into what the media wanted us to buy into, you know, drink 1, 2, 3 litres of water. Hence this new craze that's been going on for some years now, where you see people walking about with bottles of water, you know, crazy, crazy, crazy. And I moved to Cyprus, and I was thinking, oh, in the heat, I really need to get the water down me. So I used to line up my 3 litres in jugs, and with lemon in those days. And I'd get through the first jug and I thought, I can't do this. I just cannot do it. And now I realise from what I've learned that I just wasn't absorbing that water. It was crap water from start to finish. And all I was doing was weeing every half an hour and thinking, oh my God, waste of time, keep running to the toilet. So that is one very obvious sign. If you're peeing a lot then, Amanda, then you are not absorbing that water.
Yeah, and if you're drinking, I think if you're drinking more than 2 litres a day, you've got this. I don't think we were designed to do that. I don't think when we, you know, before we had taps and when we all lived.
When we were more pure with our thinking and, you know, the lack of pollution on this planet. Yeah, because let's go back to the Stone Age, and they would eat the berries and so on, which are very hydrating to us. All fruit is hydrating, you know, and really, you know, the whole way this is taught is not for the benefit of humanity. So.
Absolutely. I mean, these days I drink, but actually, even though I'm a huge water fan, I think people expect me to be that person, which I was 5 years ago. Okay. You know, not going everywhere I go, I've got 5 litres.
You've got a gallon that you're taking.
But, you know, I drink 1 water bottle a day, but that's also because you know, with changing my diet, you know, I found the right sort of diet for me that was more hydrating too. I think I used to live on a very modern day diet that was dehydrating. Yeah. You know, and I found I needed moist foods for my body. Yeah. Yes. And I think I used to just live on dry foods, which were, you know, the sandwiches. I travelled a lot when I was, well, I still do, but when I was younger, it was living on sandwiches and airport food and whatever the host dished up for me. And it was predominantly a very dry diet, high carbohydrate. And so, you know, with the carbohydrates, for every gram of, you know, carbohydrate we ingest, we need a meal of water to help digest it. So you're drinking so much to just digest your food. And I think that's an important thing to look at too. If you really can't if the water's not coming right for you and you're really drinking a lot, you're just constantly feeling dehydrated, is to look at the foods you're ingesting as well. Maybe you need some more moisture in your food.
Yeah, so I think that's a great place for us to finish, because it's a lot for people to digest, and this is the very first in a series that Amanda and I will be doing, Get Your Water Right. She's given some really good tips and, you know, how to work with that yourself without spending money. This is cost.
It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't.
It has to be. If you're paying a lot of money for your water, there is something not right in your life and the way that you are absorbing that water. And from a bigger picture point of view, to help our planet and humanity, you are buying into a system that wants you to spend trillions of dollars on water in plastic bottles that is not serving your highest good. And if you really get that message from what Amanda's taught us and what we've discussed here, you are on the fast track to living a healthier, better life that can only be good for your well-being. So on that note, thank you so much, Amanda. And, you know, let's get together and talk about water and fasting. How does that feel? Okay.
Wonderful.
So thank you so much for your time, and bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.